I'm making a retro-styled horror game with Unreal Engine 5 called The Revanchist. Put together a quick test level to tune the graphics, but I've got no gameplay. Let's change that. For now, I want to do three things. Add a functional weapon, add a UI for the inventory, and make an enemy. Gonna do them in order from the easiest to the hardest, so let's start with the weapon. Starting off, I had to model the arms for my character. First, I imported a generic character model to use as a reference. Then I started building simple, low-poly meshes around that. For textures, I just threw on a sweater and took pictures of my hands and arms, threw them into Photoshop, and made this texture. I decided to give the first-person arms individual fingers, even though most retro games don't do that. I just think it's going to give me more room for detailed animations. I rigged it up to a simple 3ds Max biped since I've already got IK set up. What is IK? It's this.
Oh yeah.
I had a couple of problems. Fourth time's the charm. And this is what I got so far. It's out of walking animation. Now, in old survival horror games, you can only really shoot while aiming, which either completely locks out your movement or at least heavily slows it. This adds a lot more of a risk-reward balance to combat, where engaging with enemies leaves you more vulnerable, and I wanted to implement a similar feature. But I still have to make it shoot. So let's get animating. Now, I was tempted to reuse the animations from the previous version. They're both on the same skeleton, and I've even got the shorty already modeled. Thing is, bad as I am at animating, I worked really hard on those old ones to make them feel slick, fluid, and realistic. I don't think they're going to be a great fit. I want something with a little bit more jank. I spent a bit of time tweaking and refining the visuals, and here's what I'm left with. Still no sound, but it'll be easy to add later. So the programming for this is a lot more complicated than it has to be. I wanted it to be very adaptable, so here's a quick rundown. Firstly, this function pulls the trigger, checks if the gun's able to shoot, makes sure you have ammo, then it moves on to the firing function. This kicks off a few different events for sound, animations, and moves on to spawning the projectiles. First, it runs a trace down the length of the barrel, so you can't shoot through walls by sticking the gun through it. Then it fires shots, sends the relevant info to the impact function. Time to make it reload. I've been dreading this, it's just not as fun. I made a simple animation to insert the shells into the shotgun, and it's got a couple of issues, but it gets the job done for now. But here I realized something. I always intended the game to be played at a low resolution, kind of like an old console, but I've never actually tested to see how that looks. I threw together some quick lines in the game mode blueprint to lower the screen resolution, and here's how it looks. I had to adjust a few things, but works for now. From there, I polished off the animations and coding for the reload. I added this reticle to appear over interactable objects for debugging purposes, but it's toggleable in the settings, so I think I'm going to leave it in as an option just in case people want it. Now, I want to start with the inventory UI. First, I want some sort of pop-up when you go to pick up an item. With inventory management as a feature, sometimes you don't want to pick up every item you interact with, so I started off with this really basic text prompt, and then I made them... So I started off with this really basic test prompt. Fuck, that's hard. So I started with this really basic text prompt, then I made the item float up to your screen and spin around. If you don't want it, it goes back to where it was and forgets all about you. If you do, slides on over, gets added to your inventory. Now, I wanted to clean it up a bit, make it more fluid to use. Instead of having to click on these little buttons at the bottom, I made it so each half of the screen functions as its own button, so it's easier to mouse over and click. One problem though, when the UI pops up, you have to click first before it pays attention to the mouse. Then after it goes away, you have to click again to make the mouse go away. So instead of 1 click to pick up an item, it's 3. I'm not sure what causes this. If anyone knows a solution, feel free to let me know. It'd be greatly appreciated. Still there's a couple of bugs to work on, but it's all going to be easy to hammer out later. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So after about 2 weeks of development, here's a quick showcase of where I'm at so far. Remember, it's just a test level, quickly slapped together. So now, it's time to start on the actual inventory UI. For now, I've just put together this quick setup to render out some item thumbnails. And yeah, it's basically all I've got for now. If you're interested, feel free to check out my previous video on the project and subscribe to see more as it comes. Thank you very much. Have a good one. So sorry for the terrible audio quality on all this, by the way. I don't actually have a proper setup right now, so I've got my iPhone in this sort of homemade sound booth. I record on there, and then I have to stream it to my computer through Bluetooth, where I've got the speaker output plugged directly into the microphone input, where I then record my sound recording in Audacity and then bring it over. Yeah, it's about as hacky as any of my work on the previous versions of that game.